My name is Tanya Johnson. I'm a registered psychologist, registered play therapist, co-founder of the Institute of Child Psychology. Have you ever been so absorbed in an activity that you lose a sense of time and place? I'm going to almost bet that we've probably all been there. But there's a big difference between what we call flow states and hyperfocus. We're going to discuss that difference today, and then I'm going to give you some strategies on how to help your ADHD kid invest in their time. Let's chat about flow states first. In a flow state, we become absorbed in an activity. So if I'm knitting and listening to music, and suddenly I go, whoa, 2 hours have passed, I have to make a snack and get to my online class, I'm able to stop. So I've lost some sort of sense of time, but I'm also still aware of external and internal cues. When you are hyper-focused, it's almost as if everything else stops and you get sucked into a time vortex and you begin to ignore bodily cues and environmental demands. So again, if I was knitting, drinking tea, listening to music in a hyper-focused state, I wouldn't get up and go, oh, it's time for my online class and I need to make a meal. Or if it's late at night, that I'm exhausted and I need to go to bed. Although neurotypical people can experience hyperfocus, it's much more common in people who have ADHD or who are on the spectrum. Think of focus almost like the flashlight of your mind. It's where all of your energy radiates towards. In hyperfocus, that flashlight is on steroids. It's supercharged and intensely focused on a task. What causes hyperfocus? Hyperfocus is thought to be caused by lower levels of dopamine in the ADHD brain. Dopamine is the neurotransmitter that's often blamed for distractibility. The lower levels of dopamine seem to make it difficult to switch from a really interesting task, like a screen, to something more mundane, like homework or chores or going shopping with mom. When hyperfocus occurs, we use up our energy reserves, which is glucose, in our brains. And once our glucose diminishes, cortisol kicks in. That cortisol helps us to keep going. But very often, we see that our children's bodies are in a stressed state. We often see hyperfocus when kids are playing a game, surfing the internet, looking at Instagram, or if they have some sort of hobby that they are deeply engrossed in. In clinic, when parents are considering an ADHD diagnosis, parents will often say to me, Tanya, I don't think he has ADHD. He can focus on the things that he loves for long periods of time. He just doesn't pay attention to other things. Hyperfocus is so confusing for us because so often it's the opposite of what we hear in the media. Now, it's important to note that there's nothing inherently wrong with hyperfocus. In fact, many individuals with ADHD find that hyperfocus allows them to be deeply creative and highly productive. In session, I always give my children lists of people who are famous and creative who have ADHD. We just want our children to be able to use their unique gifts. So, how do we help our kids? If there's an activity that we know that they become easily engrossed in, then we have to step in as their surrogate prefrontal cortex, their external thinking brain. We step in and we give them those cues to stop activities. This needs to be repeated many times for this to become a stronger neural activity for them. Remember too that when our children have been engaged in a high dopamine activity, like watching a screen, and then we move to a lower dopamine activity, that it can be incredibly hard for them. One of my favorite strategies is that as the end of screen time approaches, is to go up to them, put your hand on their shoulder so we bring them back into reality, use your voice to ask them about their game or their show. Oh, who's winning now? Oh, what just happened in the show? We bring them back to reality, and then we remind them we have 5 minutes left. Maybe we keep sitting next to them. 2 minutes, time to switch off. Keep to that limit. Instead of standing in the kitchen and yelling to your kiddo that it's time to turn off a show, remember where that external prefrontal cortex, walk to the TV room, get the remote control, and turn it off. Bridging activities can also be really helpful with hyperfocus. So we've helped them to stop, But remember, we might have that drop now because now we're going to move to a low dopamine activity. So use a bridging activity like a snack, a water together, cuddle, go for a walk, read a book together. Those bridging activities are vital for many children with ADHD and make keeping time a family affair. When we focus just on our kiddos' time, they often become quite defensive. One of my favorite tools is a family media plan. So with this, we sit down and as a family, everybody's going to be using their tech a little bit differently, but we create limits for each person in the family and we uphold those limits. My final little tip here is find natural breaks for your kiddo. See if you can get their screen time to end at the end of an episode or at the end of a specific round on a game. I know I have a hard time stopping a Netflix episode in the middle. Of course, our kids struggle with it too. And eventually we want our kids to begin to learn some of the self-governance themselves. Self-talk is incredibly powerful. Find a sentence that you repeat to them that hopefully they eventually internalize. Something like, when I move my body, I have a healthy brain. And that's something that we say every time we transition into a new activity. Help them to set alarms. Let those alarms either vibrate or have different pitches so that it wakes them up from where they're at or pulls them out of that hyper-focus state. Apps are also fantastic. This is where technology is great. One of my favorites is Timer. And probably most importantly, educate and empower your kids. Talk to them about how their brain is wired differently. And this wiring allows for so many beautiful possibilities, but that we need to take care of their unique brain. My favorite book to talk to kids about ADHD is My Brain Needs Glasses, ADHD Explained to Kids. Role model your own ability to watch your time, manage your time. Talk to your kids, talk out loud when you're actually able to put down a device. Talk to them when you do get stuck in losing large amounts of time. So often we don't have these conversations with our children. And remember that time management often with our children with ADHD starts with external cues from a supportive, connected, warm, caring adult who holds those limits for our children. And eventually with our children, it becomes internalized. For those of you interested in learning more, we have a wonderful workshop on ADHD. I'll link it in the description below. I'd love it if you join us there. Thank you so much.